Welcome to my series based on Zentangle's Bijou Be Well, done in May 2025. Each day, Zentangle put out a video featuring one pattern, and the design was meant to be drawn in a short amount of time, so you could just take a little time for yourself and kind of get yourself centered. I encourage you to go visit their YouTube channel. I'll have the link down in the comments, and you could see how they did their designs. This series is meant to walk you through how to draw each design, and then also to give you some alternative ideas for embellishments and ways to kind of zhuzh up that pattern. This video focuses on Arukas. For all cards in this series, I used the same tools, so you will see in every single video in this series a blue Micron 05 pen, a General's Indigo blue chalk pastel pencil, an 8B graphite pencil, two Tortillons, so one for blue, one for black, and white tiles. And of course, that's my trusty little pencil sharpener there as well. If you followed along with the Zentangle series, you will notice that they also include a white pencil and a Tortillon for that. I chose to not use those for my series because I'm using a white tile, and I find that the white chalk pastel pencil really doesn't add very much to the design. Take a moment to gather your tools, get yourself centered, make sure you're sitting comfortably in your chair. When you're ready, let's begin. We begin with a pencil string line that is a seed shape going from corner to corner diagonally. And when you get your seed shape done, you can put down your pencil and pick up your pen. And we're going to start by drawing a small orb about a third of the way in from the tip of one side of the seed. And then from here, we're going to draw a series of arms coming from that orb with some space in between. So starting at the orb, draw a straight line down to the string line, and then draw an aura, or what we would consider a parallel line. Keep those nice and skinny. I'm going to turn my card, do that again, leaving space between those sets of lines. And then I'm going to turn my card and do it again. The angles don't have to be exactly the same, but you do want to leave space between the lines because we're going to do some things in between. And depending on how you space out your lines, you'll probably end up with either 4 sets or 5 sets of lines. I typically go for 5, but sometimes I just don't space it out quite right and I end up with 4, and it doesn't really matter. This pattern looks cool no matter what you do. From here, I'm now going to aura that orb. I'm going to come out a little ways. This is going to be a fatter aura. And you can see I'm drawing an arc between the lines that pretty much matches what that original orb was. Then I'm going to go through, go around and aura the lines, the straight lines. So it starts looking sort of like a sunburst. This is basically the pattern now. So we aura the straight lines, then we aura the orb, and then we aura the straight lines, and then we aura the orb. And we're not going to fill the seed completely with this one Arukas pattern. We're actually going to do this twice. So as you work around your seed, you'll know when to stop when you still have some space on the other side of the seed, but everything towards the side that you started is filled. And this is all going to depend on how thick you do your lines and how thick you do the arcs. But you just keep working around. If you miss a line, and this happens sometimes, oftentimes you can just kind of skip it and ignore it. And sometimes you can sneak a line in there. It just kind of depends on where it's at in the pattern. But don't sweat it if you miss a line. Once everything's all drawn in there, if something's missed, it doesn't really matter. And as you get towards the string line, your pencil line, you're going to start doing some partials. So at some point you're going to run out of like space to do either the straight lines or the arcs, but like maybe part of that arc would be peeking through. Okay, I've filled in half of my seed shape. So now I'm going to come down to the other side, about a third of the way from the tip of my string there. I'm going to put another orb and do exactly the same thing. This time, as I'm drawing my Arukas shape, when I run into the first one, obviously that's going to be a hard and fast boundary. So you can see here I'm actually starting from my original. And I'm doing this just so I can space things out better. I really want this to look like it's going underneath the first one. So by starting those lines up against the first Arukas shape, that helps me make sure that I have quite a bit, quote unquote, going under that first shape. So now I'm going to fill in the space with this Arukas. There is going to be no more empty space in the seed when I am done. Before we put down our pens, we're going to do a little embellishment. I'm going to color every other arc segment down each arm of Arukas. I'm going to start with the first segment coming off the orb. I'm leaving the orb alone and then just working every other segment down the arm. I'm going to focus on the arm and not trying to go or say around the circle, because you're probably going to have uneven arms because some of these arms are going to be longer than others. So it's just easier to just start in the middle and just go every other down the line and not worry too much about whether everything is even all the way around the circle. When I'm done with my first Arukas, I'm going to go and do the exact same thing for the second one. Put down your pen, pick up your pencil. I'm using chalk pastel, but if you only have graphite, that works too. I'm going to start at the orb. I'm going to put a thick line of graphite along one side of the orb. And when we blend this out, we'll create a little bit of a bubbly effect. Then I'm going to go down the line, down the arms again, and put a line of the pencil just outside of the segments that I filled in. And when I blend this out, I'm going to not pull the blue or the graphite all the way into the space. This goes for the orb as well as each of these little arcs. In other words, I'm going to create a gradient and keep a lot of the color focused pretty much where I applied it, and then just pull it a little bit into the space, so I end up going from like a dark blue to a lighter blue. That will make it so the orb has like a bubbly effect, gives a little bit of a three-dimensional effect. And then the blue becomes almost like a shadow on each of these arms. So that creates a little extra color, but doesn't completely turn the white segments blue. We keep them a little white towards the edge. And just like we did with the embellishment, we do with the first Arukas, we're going to also do with the second. Now we're going to address all of these straight lines. I'm still using my chalk pastel, but graphite works here as well. I'm putting a small amount of the pencil on both ends of the line and leaving the middle white. So where it meets the center part and the arms gets a little bit of blue, and where it meets the string line gets a little bit of blue. And then I'm leaving at least a very small amount of it white if possible. When I blend this out, I'm going to keep the blue pretty close to the shape itself and the string line. Since I'm not putting an awful lot down, this is pretty easy to do because I want to leave the middle white to create a nice bright highlight in each of these sections. And when I get done with the first Arukas, I'm once again going to do the exact same thing with the second one. Now I'm going to grab my graphite pencil. If you started with graphite, you may not want to do this step. It's going to depend on how much you already have in place. I'm going to create just a tiny little bit of a shadow where each of the bluish white arcs are going into those straight lines. So I'm putting a small amount of graphite right along the intersection of the arc and those lines. I'm not putting very much down. And then I'm also going to figure out where I want the darkest part of my orb to be. And I'm going to put a very small amount of graphite in that area as well. When I blend this out, I'm not going to go very far from where I put the graphite. So I'm really just smudging over what's there so there's no sharp lines. It just softens it a little bit, but I'm not pulling it into the arc. And that makes it so it looks like these straight lines are now sitting on top of or laying over top of the arcs themselves. And again, when I get done with the first one, I'm going to do the second Arukas pattern exactly the same way. This next step I would encourage you to do whether you started with color or graphite. I am going to put a very thick line of graphite along the intersection of the second Arukas into the first Arukas, and I'm going to use this to create a very deep shadow where the overlap occurs. Don't be afraid to do this. This will really make things look very three-dimensional. As I blend this out, I'm keeping that graphite still pretty close to where I drew it. I'm letting it come onto the second Arukas a little bit, just so you can see how deep the shadow is. And then finally, what I'm going to do is only where the lines, the straight lines are, I'm not going to do this where the arcs meet, but where the straight lines touch the string line, I'm going to put a little bit of graphite down on those as well. And as I blend that, I'm going to keep that going up onto the pattern. I'm not going to let the graphite come out onto the card. And that will just make it seem like those lines are wrapping around something. And when you're done, take a moment to admire the work that you put into this pattern. And when you're ready, pick up your pen and add your chop to your design. And there you have it, Arukas.